Good afternoon, and welcome back to USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. My name is Laura Bowen, and I'm the Executive Director at USTA Florida. In today's episode, we're going to share with you how we turn data and information into real-time insights that could help us in our business. Joining me today is Brad West. Brad has been with USTA Florida for more than a decade. He was originally hired to help transform our online presence. Many of the things you see today, from our website to our social media, are a credit to Brad. 2 years ago, he took on a new role as our CRM and data analytics coordinator. In that time, he's collected a wealth of information that are transforming the way that we see our business and apply our resources. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts and comments after the episode. Enjoy. Good afternoon, Brad. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. I know we work together pretty much every day, but we've never been on the podcast together, so I'm super excited to talk about business insights and data and see where our conversation leads us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Super excited to be here. Fun topic, fun with numbers.
Fun with numbers, right? Who doesn't like numbers? Lots of people, actually. But we're going to make it fun today, whether they like them or not. All right. Well, first of all, the topic today that we're talking about is business insights. And, I want to start by talking about business insights and data. We hear a lot about data. I mean, I can't tell you, it's almost like bingo when I sit into like a meeting where someone is like, we need more data. And it's like, okay, yep, they've said it. And how we're supposed to be using data to drive decisions that we make. But can you maybe talk a little bit about what the difference is between data and having business insights?
Sure. There's a ton of misunderstanding, I think, there, and it gets intimidating with people a lot of times too. And it's pretty simple, actually. It's really, they all build off of one another. So data is simply just facts and information. It could be county, it could be demographic information, so forth and so on. That data compiled together is what provides analytics. And analytics are things like the number of teams in a particular county, so forth and so on. But then insights is where you start to interpret that information. You start to gain understanding. And insights is where it drives questions. Whether you want to solve a problem, it should become actionable at that point, and it really contributes towards decision making. So, for example, if the number of teams declined in a particular county from one year to the next, this is where you can go back to the analytics and start drilling down and make some actionable decisions and go forward. But you really can't have analytics without data, and you can't have business insights without analytics. So they really do work very much hand in hand. And in some ways, if you want to understand, like an example would be take a book. Any one chapter or paragraph doesn't tell the whole story, but the book altogether tells the whole story. And then you can engage in some critical thinking from what you've learned and taken in from that.
You're giving me flashbacks from my degree program where I had to read lots of books and then go in and analyze what was being said and how it was being said and what it really meant. And it definitely hurt my brain for a long, long period of time. But now here I am, and maybe I can apply that critical thinking, which I think is what gets missed sometimes in that process, right? As we talk about data and here's the information, but you really have to dig deeper into what it's showing you, why it's showing you. Sometimes you have to even ask more questions and go investigate further before you can. And like you said, that's the analytics part. Like, what are you doing with this data and how are you really digging into it to give you that insight into your business, which is kind of what we try to do daily and what you help us do regularly.
Right, exactly.
So I want to look at some of the data we collect. I did a podcast on the PAC study, the tennis participation report that the TIA puts out. And we've always had questions about this study. Like, we get this report, right? Our industry gets it. And it's sort of like, well, how does this stack up to the information we're seeing here? And like, how does this representation or insights that you're providing us really translate here? And having that snapshot, which is rear view looking once a year, sometimes is not as helpful as knowing what's happening in real time. So based on, some of the feedback from that podcast and just my own questions and frustrations, I wanted to take a look at some of the data we collect here at USTA Florida. And maybe you could show us some of the examples of how we gather this information, put it in dashboards, and then analyze it in the ways that I use every day to kind of track what's happening here in Florida. So I'm going to let you drive and talk through kind of some of the ways that we do this here in Florida.
Exactly. There's a number of different sources, and it really starts with figuring out what it is that you either want to solve, you want to track, so forth and so on, and then working backwards. And then we've kind of done some of that. But our data and information and analytics and insights come from varied sources, and they include national level reports. They come from CRM level reports that we've built, and I'll explain that in a moment. But there's things like census population data that's important that we can grab pretty easily. There's also state level reports for population and growth, which we'll go into. But it also comes from things like just asking, like, where are our courts throughout the community and or throughout the state, which we built that directory a while ago. What you're looking at right now is an example of something within our CRM, and this information was compiled. And these are league captains and teams throughout the state of Florida. And they're all associated with individual contact records, and they're associated with individual locations as well. What that ends up translating into, we can feed that into a dashboard. This will feed into a dashboard where we can start breaking all that information out, where we now start to know exactly where all our teams are taking place and our leagues. We can also see the number of teams playing out of different facilities, out of different counties. We can see when they start and when they end throughout the year. So this information can all be filtered down as well if we wanted to get granular. And what this ends up helping us with is a number of things. Is we can plan our work better. We can go back if we see changes and variations from year to year. We can go in and we can drill down into the various areas. This is very similar in our tournament space. So in our tournament space, we record things very similarly, and we can start to see where our tournaments are taking place, what's our average number of participants, all those different things. And again, we can look back by particular location or tournament director, so forth and so on. We can also start to gauge these reviews that are coming in and associated with different areas and different tournament directors. We also have this in the wheelchair space.
And I wanted to, make sure that our audience knew that, turn back the clock maybe like 4 years ago, we weren't doing this, right? So it was very much like word of mouth, people telling us we need more, like to have this data across the different things that we're doing has really expanded our ability to take that feedback that we get and come back and say, okay, what are we seeing here? And how do those two things work together to really make those improvements? So, just kudos to you and to all of our team here that really puts information in here, because this is what I look at on a regular basis when we are making those decisions about where are we lacking in resources, events, programs, and those kinds of things. So, but wheelchair is one of my favorites. So I look at this space, as you know, I'm running that project team, and I look at this space a lot. So I'm so excited that you're going to share it. So show kind of what we're tracking here in this space.
So what we're tracking in this space is we want to track programs that are going on throughout the state, but we also want to track our grants. So we can see where grants have been received and maybe programs aren't running or whatnot. And that will give us an opportunity of where we can reach out, where we can maybe possibly grow the sport a little more. But we also keep track of our trainees in this space and see where they've taken place And again, that's something we have the ability to go back and create a plan to engage with various trainers and people who have been trained throughout the state and get more programs from you. Tournaments as well, where's that play happening? And where are some adaptive sports organizations throughout the state that we can also engage with that can help us grow the sport and wheelchair tennis throughout the state? And then that goes into as well as into our community coach program and trainings that we conduct throughout the state. We can track those and we can see where those trainings have happened, and we can see who are the participants, who are our registrants that are outstanding, and who's trained in what. So this gives us an opportunity to not only possibly grow more programming, but also when we have providers that need help from us and need help with their existing programs, we can go back and see who's been trained with what and where we have opportunities to train more people throughout the state, whether it be in wheelchair or other areas such as red ball, adult beginner, and so forth and so on.
And another really cool thing that you did when we were looking at this space in particular is, even though it's self-reported, and I know we have not everybody reports it, but one of our curiosities was, is the lack of women who are coaches a systemic issue, or is there some space where they fall off, right? Where we have a lot of women coming in to teach community programs, but when it comes to being certified tennis professionals or directors of tennis, they fall off. And so we started to track demographic information as part of this program. And that was not just gender, we were asking them to self-report in other categories too. And it gave us information that went beyond just, is this program successful and how many people are we reaching and where are we doing it? And it started to turn on some light bulbs in our head about, what there seems to be at some point in the journey that it becomes less viable for more diverse participants to stay on this pathway. And we're still digging into that information. But if we didn't have this information, I think it would be very hard for us to even know what questions we're supposed to be asking in these other ways that we're trying to grow the game and diversify.
Right, exactly. And this is where the technology really comes into play too, that we might not have really been able to leverage as much in the past, because we have those contact records and we have that location information. So it's very easy to start pulling out that information over time from the information that we have recorded, and we can track better and get better insights and make better decisions 100%. And then some of our other data too is just a little more static. So we have, for example, this is information that we can pull from our national level reports and whatnot, and they're just basic tables. And when you look at them this way, they're not very usable. And this is where these dashboards information and things come into play. So that information can be fed into here and allow us to see where those teams are really participating. What are the percentage of no-cut teams by school type, by gender, so forth and so on, and the level of play. And that really helps us identify where there's team play happening in the junior space throughout the state, and where there's opportunities for more play opportunities that we can provide and engage with them, or opportunities where we can help schools throughout the state that may want to get programs started. And then some of it's just a little more static. The state of Florida does a great job partnering with UF and BEBR, as well as doing population projections throughout the state. And these go all the way out to 2050 and are updated, I believe, annually. So we can go back and we can gather that information. But that translates into something where we could do projections of heat maps and see where there's potential growth, because we know growth is happening in tennis all throughout the United States, and a lot of people coming to Florida, they're coming from other areas of the country, and we're seeing population growth impact tennis participation growth throughout the state. So this positions us to see where some of that activity is going to happen in larger amounts than others, and prioritize and focus some efforts, and go back into other information such as Is there a lack of courts there, and is there a need?
That's come up so many times. I think the question that is constantly raised, it's like, well, how do we know where we need tennis courts? And it's, there's a number of factors that this type of information could potentially allow us, but this population data specific to the state allows us to see, hey, there's a lot more people coming in, and we need to take a look at those areas and say, do we have the capacity to serve them? Because at this point, we're, at the highest rate of tennis play that we've ever been. And we need to figure out, what are those things that we need to do better or more of to make sure that when people come here, that tennis continues to be the sport that's available to them.
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing just a quick look at those dashboards, which we definitely look at every day. And I think it's important for those in Florida tennis know, this is the information we're collecting and analyzing and looking at regularly. But it's not done yet. This isn't a done product, and it's not something that we're, saying we're finished with yet. We're kind of just getting started in this space. So I wanted to ask, as you sort of look ahead, and I know we have a project team kind of engaging in this work right now, but how are you in that that team sort of working collaboratively to maybe build some better reports that would show specifically how Florida tennis is performing and maybe where we might need to apply more resources? Because sometimes these national reports don't really truly reflect what's happening here in the Sunshine State. So how do we do a better job of that?
Yeah, so we identified some key people throughout the organization and brought them together to look at this as a group, because we tend to approach, I think, insights and reporting and whatnot in more of a siloed type of way. So we have this group coming together, and they're challenged with looking at what reports do we need across the organization, and then what information, where are we going to get that information from to build these out? And then where are we going to house them where it's very easily accessible across the organization and on demand when people need that. And that it's there and it's consumable in a way and usable for people to gain those insights and use it for not only strategizing, but making decisions or identifying a problem and being able to drill down and really moving from the concept of I think to I know, which is oftentimes, I myself, whenever I encounter a problem and I start finding myself saying, I think, I stop and I go and I want to get the facts and the information, because once I can get to that point, I can move forward more effectively and more efficiently. And that's going to be a charge of this group too, is not only getting those reports together, but developing the guidance and the onboarding for new people and the education piece where we can help those out in the field and better support our customers with whatever comes out of that project and the information that we start compiling and putting together.
Yeah, I mean, it does change the dynamic of a conversation a lot, when you go into a room and you show, here's what we're seeing, and let people, provide the context for it, because you're never going to not need that human interaction or that context. Finding out why the picture looks the way it does always requires that human insight and that human interaction. But sometimes, perception is our greatest enemy. And so coming in there and saying, look, this is actually what is happening. So when we say, hey, your area is poised for significant growth, and here's why, we see that there's significant population increase. We see that, you have developers coming in investigating your area. We are seeing higher demand for our programs and play. So when you have those ingredients coming together, it really allows us to have better conversations locally with municipalities, providers, and others in those areas to say, this is the time to invest in your area. And we have factual information and data to back it up.
Right. Exactly.
So I talked before about I really struggle at times with the lack of information that is currently being shared publicly about the state of tennis play. The sort of once yearly reporting situation is I don't think any ideal for any industry, to be honest. And it's been that way for a super long time. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot and ask you a question, which is what insights that we have so far really stand out to you as important for us to share with our tennis advocates as we look to continue our growth into the future?
All right. Well, I'm getting quizzed, huh? Do I get graded as
Yeah,
well?
maybe we'll let the audience grade you. They'll comment how you did.
I think that goes back to really, or I know it goes back to, the theme of even things like our website, and that's when people are playing, where they're playing, and how they're playing. That's the basis of it, and if we can provide that and equip and arm advocates out there with that, so that's things like programs, it's adult leagues, it's tournaments, wheelchair and adaptive tennis in schools. So once they know that and they know where providers and trainers are, that other demographic information again helps like population growth, like you said, and so forth and so on. Because exactly like you said, when you go into conversations, what do we all hear right from the beginning is nobody's playing tennis. And when we can show them, yes, there is a lot of people playing tennis. And this is how many are playing and these different ways, that decision that really alters the tide of the conversation and the ultimate result and the outcome in the decision making. And we have seen that in communities throughout the state. And I think that's where we're really heading to better support those out in the communities that go to their municipal governments maybe and say, hey, we need more courts here. Um, and they're saying, we really need you to provide what's it looking like out in here that justifies that need.
Yeah, and I think we're sort of at this space where, we've relied on these sort of national big figures, but when it comes down to that advocacy piece, it's always local. What's happening in Pensacola is very, different than maybe what's happening in Pasco County or in Miami or in Sarasota. And I think that when you go into these places, knowing that local market and knowing sort of the dynamic of what's happening there and being able to speak to it is going to help us tremendously. So I'm very excited about the work that you are doing here and what you're building here for us. I do have one more question, which I know you've really been digging into as well. So this is the information that we have, and you've been able to pull some information that is available to us through USTA, which is, very helpful. But as an industry, I know there's a lot of information that gets collected. How can we all work more collaboratively to be able to build these sort of shared insights, right? How can we facilitate that so that, you know, everybody has access to information that then can be used to say, hey, here's what the insights are showing, and meet everybody's need.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think there's a lot of different organizations within the tennis industry, as we know, and it's a little more complex than I ever thought, even when I came on board. But I think it's really about coming together on what information is needed and why, and what problems are we trying to solve? And we have a really good group over at our USTA national group that have served up a lot of information to us at times. And I speak with them and ask them, like, could I get this a little differently because we need to see this, that, or the other. And they've been really accommodating and wonderful to work with. But I think at the same time, it's also how do we decide as a group where the sources of those information are and that we share them. And granted, there's some proprietary information that wouldn't be wanted to share, but it's identifying that throughout that process. But then I think it's making those insights easily accessible and usable on a more timely basis, on a routine basis, and on demand versus that once a year type of thing, where a lot of things may have happened in between that time. And then I think there's also providing that education and guidance even outside of internally is to our providers and to our other customers that we work with and our advocates as well. And I think, just like we train people with skills on a court, it's the same thing there as training people and educating them on how to look at this information and how it can be used at times and to leverage it. And I think if we do that, we're going to really better position, everybody to help one another, because everybody sees things differently as well, and they don't all have to be in the same space. And that helps everybody and for the same result we all want to get, which is to see tennis grow throughout the communities for everybody. And I think for us, it really helps us to better support our providers and our customers. And like I said, it really would engage in collaboration throughout the entire industry and sometimes throughout the entire country beyond our section.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I know we've said many times, you've said it, and so have I, that, we're happy to share the information we have with anyone and everyone, who wants to, look at it and walk through it. We're very open, and, we'd love to incorporate any other insights that anyone's willing to offer us. I think ultimately there has to be a trust there. We're, like you said, we're not looking to say, oh, somebody's using this, not doing enough in this area or whatever, but you can't move forward. You can't be forward looking if you don't have the information and the true information of like, how are things right now? So, I think sometimes this information, everybody's always looking for the positive in the PR side. I'm almost looking at it as, I want the reality, right? I want the reality. And I mostly see where are the opportunities to grow, where are the opportunities to do more. And I think the more that we can share that and say, hey, what are some of those trends, and we can spot them earlier, and we can become that trusted voice to say, here's what's happening in Florida tennis. We will all be able to do it better. So I'm hopeful that maybe this podcast is a step in that direction. And then maybe going into 2024, we'll be able to share insights more on a regular basis and start to build that trust and that mutual respect with all of our partners in the industry.
Absolutely. It's truly exciting. I'm really happy to be a part of this project and see the things that we've done over the last couple of years, and what we started with one little thing, and it just snowballed and built into other things and the possibilities that are out there. So really, really exciting times.
It is. I mean, it has been a long journey, and I know you and I have worked together for over a decade now. And when sort of we started the CRM project, it just seemed like, oh, how are we going to do this? What is going to happen here?
There was more of the how are we going to do this than
Yeah. There was some crying in the corner, maybe by me. I don't know. But, this was kind of that vision, that pie in the sky vision of to get to the place where we actually could see what's happening, because at that time, from a marketing perspective, we were sort of just like throwing things out into the wind and say like, hey, is this working, and what response are we getting? And again, super grateful, and all credit to you for being able to build this and care and feed it over the last several years. And to see it come to fruition, I'm really excited about it, and I can't wait to see it grow. So thank you.
Thank you. Great opportunity to share, and I hope everybody gets some good information out of this.
Me too. Awesome. Well, thank you, Brad, for your time today. It's been a pleasure, and I'll probably see you in 5 minutes when I walk outside of my door. So
I'm on for it, so it'll take a little time
right,
to get
that's
there.
right. You're at the Open. I forgot. All right. Thanks, Brad.
Bye-bye.
That's all for this edition of USTA Florida's Here to Serve podcast. For more episodes of the podcast, including upcoming topics, guests, and dates, please visit USTAFlorida.com/here to serve. Thank you for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.